not be shared. Like, it is so entirely annoying. So let me try doing a share screen. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I don't know if you guys can hear me well. Hopefully, you guys are hearing me well. But, all right, am I buffering or was the video buffering? Because I'm just going to cut this up when I put it out. I'm just going to like, if you can hear me. So let me try to play it again. No, I didn't sleep last night because of this video. I used a new camera, and using a new camera was not it. Using a new camera. All right, let's try to play it now. We'll try to play it now. This entire fun part, I'm gonna attempt to delete when I go live, but let's try to do this now.
So his name popped in my head, and I was like, and so his name popped in my head, and I was like, Mom, I gotta get off the phone. So I get off the phone and I call him, and I go, Hey, it's Anyeka, and he goes, Hey, and I go, is everything okay? He goes, How can I help you? And I go, Did my ex take money from you? And he says, That motherfucker took $30,000 from me. And I was just so shook. Like, and I asked him, I go, Why didn't you bring this up to me? He goes, Well, Anyeka, you're Nigerian. Like, that's a scamming capital of the world. I didn't know if you were in on it. And that's when the irony hit me. I'm Nigerian, and I'm a proud Nigerian. I tell people it's my biggest flex. But the country's not perfect. We have our strengths, we have our weaknesses. But one of our weaknesses is that there's a ton of scammers versus Denmark, who's considered to be this prestigious, wealthy, happy country. So the fact that a Danish man pulled this over on a Nigerian or Nigerians collectively, it just blew my mind.
Wait. It's absolutely absurd. I'm done. I'm over. Hey guys, welcome back to Themis and Those. Grab your coffee, water, tea, whatever you're drinking, go and get that. Today, we're going to be talking about the Danish deception, but not in the full story as I've done at this point 15 hours of streaming on it. And I realized that I did not go through any real sociological or psychological work, particularly around tokenism. I had a bunch of notes on Friday when I went live, but I did not go into those notes as I was having way too much fun. So let's do it now. When we think about tokenism, there is the status of the perceived, the person being tokenized, and the perceiver, the person tokenizing someone. For a lot of people in a white supremacist system, it's very difficult to not go through the world being a token, particularly if you're in corporate America. A lot of people just end up being tokenized, quote unquote, right? The ease with which we see Onyeka accepting tokenization and fighting to be the token is really unsettling if you watch it properly. When we listen to her and the conversation she's having with this rich friend who says that she did not tell Onyeka about her husband scamming them because they thought she was in on it because she was Nigerian, she doesn't see this as a overt racial aggression and racism that requires analysis or explanation, but rather she reflects on this and accepts that Nigerians are scammers. And the irony she finds there is that she was being scammed by a Danish royal, a man from Denmark, and not that the person speaking to her was being racist, and if not racist, at least applying a general stereotype to her. And this got me thinking about Onyeka as the person being perceived as a token, but not only is she a token in the way that systems in place kind of shuffles in certain people from a marginalized group into a very wide system and remove everyone else. So you're the only Black person present at certain kinds of meeting. She wants it this way. She pursues whiteness in a very specific way. And she performs whiteness too, as she goes through the storytelling, as she goes through what attracted her to this Danish man in the beginning. You get a very clear picture of who Onyeka wants to be and who she actually is, and the kind of chasm that exists between who she actually is and who she wants to be is laced with a kind of cognitive dissonance that highlights a kind of identity crisis, even if she's not fully aware of said identity crisis. Tokenism exist as a product of a system not made for marginalized groups, right? But there is also the person within that system that actively seeks to be the token, the exception, the self-hate that exists here, the self-deception that exists here, and the pedestalization of otherness, in this case whiteness, that exists here culminates into a person that it's very hard to connect with, particularly if you like Blackness in any meaningful way, but also if you are aware of racial hierarchy in any meaningful way. It's very difficult to connect with someone who so willingly distances themselves from Blackness in order to be palatable. We'll get more into that later. We are going to talk about Onyeka, but I hope that it's not seen as a discussion of the individual, but something that we can all learn from, how we can identify tokenism more broadly and how we can try to grapple with it, because it does a lot of psychological harm, mental harm to the person who is tokenized, whether that is them wanting to be token, consciously seeking to be the exception, or whether they're deemed the exception and accept it as a means of survival. Before we continue, I think it's good that we, at this juncture, define what tokenism is. So Rosa Beth Cantor, let's use Cantor now, in Men and Women of the Corporation, this was written in the late 1970s, discuss what tokenism is in the context of corporate America. And it is the inclusion of a person from a marginalized group to the exclusion of the rest of the group, where the person is used as a means for showing diversity without actually allowing that person to have power in the institution they're being a part of. It also provides for us a kind of framework to analyze the social dynamics for tokenism. So when we think about using an individual from a marginalized group in the corporate world to showcase diversity, but removing them from any kind of real power and decision making in an institution, what we understand, if we apply that in a social group, it is the idea that you have a Black person in proximity to you and your group, but they do not teach anything about Blackness. They do not have power to control what the group does and engage in. And they tend to distance themselves, they have to, in order to assimilate, distance themselves, that is, from their Blackness and politics that is associated with the upliftment of Black people generally, ignoring kind of historic harm, but only bringing it up in furtherance of their willingness to ignore or downplay racism and systems in place. Onyeka strikes me as this person, and this is not just a conjecture. When she is being called out for the ways that this Danish man was able to take money from her, she very clearly says, let's not make this about race. When she says we should be colorblind, this is an quintessential statement coming from a person who is willing to be tokenized because their race is an inconvenience for them while being the thing that grant them access. So Tokens aren't seen as people, they're seen as symbols. Symbols without agency or power, used to highlight something more about the group that they've been assimilated into rather than who they are and what they bring as part of their community and or culture. Their face is all that matters. I hope it is clear that I'm theorizing now. I am attempting to take the idea of tokenism as it is applied specifically in the context of the corporate world and apply it and really dig deep, hopefully, into what we can learn, how we can analyze, but also how we can grow towards the end. I think one of the ways we can look at assimilation here is that Onyeka pretends she does not know how to pronounce her name. Now, as a Jamaican, I might be pronouncing it wrong, that's clear. But your name is such an intimate part of you. It speaks a lot of the times to your culture. And Onyeka, for someone who really wants to portray that she cares about her Nigerian culture, for her to not know how to pronounce her name, as a lot of Nigerians have come out and explained that she literally is pronouncing her name incorrectly. It's very strange, but it's also very strange to say that you love your culture while also having a person on the phone, a white person presumably, disparaging your culture and you accepting his disparaging of your culture while also adding to it, right? And so Onyeka for me represents someone that is really, really sad. It feels like Nigerian for her is a check on a list of things that she can just tell people without ever engaging with it meaningfully or caring about it. Onyeka is not a victim of tokenism in the way that she has to do it to survive. She seeks out being tokenized. Right? Again, this is not about survival, where some people have to accept their tokenization in order to survive and provide for their family. In the context of corporate America, which we talked about earlier, that makes sense. In the social group, you can make different decisions, you can make choices. Some people, and I believe this to be Onyeka, they actually do want to be the only one. And they will step on you is a part of their group in order to be the only one in these wide circles. The issue with this, unfortunately, it's sometimes very difficult to tell who is among a group of people as a token out of necessity and who is like fighting to be there. Being the one and only Black person in the room, I believe, can be hard and generally is very difficult, regardless of how you ended up there. However, wanting to be the only Black person in the room is a character flaw. As I was reading the 1977 book and going back through my notes from uni, I was reminded of the three kinds of tokens, right? They were the pet, the mother, and the dragon, right? The dragon is the feisty DMV, quote unquote, esque persona for Black women. The mother is the nurturing, kind woman who expend a lot of emotional labor in order to make sure everyone is okay at the risk of harming herself and tiring herself out. And then there is the pet, the person that is there as a face, but they are not threatening, right? They will align themselves politically, for example, with a group of people in order to seem as non-threatening as possible. Their existence in the group, while it is intentional, is dehumanizing because they cannot bring up topics or talk about anything that would bring discomfort. They're literally there as a symbol and nothing else. And the symbolism there is that there is proximity to Blackness, but a very specific kind of Blackness that is not connected to Black politics and upliftment. Onyeka falls specifically into the pet archetype from this book, right? Like we're talking about someone who mispronounces her name, who allows people to disparage Nigeria, who describes whiteness in such a way that highlights her willingness to pedestalize it, someone who really wants to take on a very specific white aesthetics, a person who friendship whose friendship is predominantly white, at least in the pictures that we get circulating on the internet. Now, I did go to her Instagram and I saw some with her family, but all of the tag pictures she's in is just her amongst a sea of white people. For example, this and this and this and this and this and this. Okay, it it reeks of a very specific person who is so ingrained, inculcated in, engulfed in a social group of her own making that represents her idea of what it is to be successful. And when you look through her Instagram page, for example, you'll see that she portrays success. And I think for Onyeka, this is a kind of theorizing of sorts too. So take it with a huge grain of salt. It feels like she likened whiteness with success. This is not to mistake me for saying that those who find themselves tokens and being the only Black person aren't also suffering. They are. I think if we want to think about it, not just from a cognitive dissonance standpoint, but an imposter syndrome, right? This would be imposter syndrome on steroid. Every time you look in the mirror, there you are. But there's a part of you that does not want to be who you are, and you show up in the world as best as you can to separate yourself from who you believe you are to who you would like to be. That kind of crater, that distance, again, laced with the kind of cognitive dissonance, the kind of discomfort about who you are and who you want to be. I cannot imagine the depth of psychological, mental pain that one goes through in order to sort of attempt to bridge that gap, or even if you don't want to bridge that gap, distance yourself even further. The kind of compartmentalizing that has to go on there, I can imagine is absolutely dreadful. In this way, you stick out like a sore thumb, right? Like you're the only Black person among a group. But not only do you stick out as a sore thumb, you're seen, but you're not perceived meaningfully, right? And so the paradox of being both visible, right, in aesthetic, physical feature, but also invisible is really sad. And the portrayal, when Onyeka comes back and starts dragging Black women, there is a playing into this good Black versus bad Black stereotype that it's so frustrating to watch because you can tell how she's talking about Black women, and she even talked about Black people are scammers also. There is this deep sense of sadness that one feels if you are in any way trying to connect and trying to find empathy. If you're just laughing, you're fine. But if you're trying to find empathy, there is a sadness because you understand that her dragging the Black women and saying she only sees Black women dragging her when literally all the race, including Black people, united in saying this is some foolishness. But in her specific attack of Black women, it is to highlight the good versus the bad Black. It's the you all Black women keep attacking me and you don't know how to act online instead of showing empathy. And here you guys are disrespecting me, completely ignoring the Asian, the white, the Hispanic people dragging her too. And also the men of all races dragging her, right? It was easier for her to pinpoint Black women and drag, attack, disparage Black women because she's trying to create a delineation instead of saying, I am not the exception, to make white people and people who believe Black people a sort of way to ignore and fight back against stereotype. She leans into stereotype and make herself the exception. For racists and white supremacists to maintain their ideas about Black and Blackness when they find someone who does not fit a kind of stereotype, they make that person the exception. We hopefully generally push back and say, I am not the exception. Black people act this way all the time. What you're doing in trying to make me the exception is racist, and you're applying stereotype in a way that is a problem for me. What Onyeka does, on the other hand, is she accepts herself being the exception and take it. When someone is talking about Nigerians being scammers generally and saying they, without talking to you, applied the general stereotype to you, that is a problem that you need to discuss with them about how they should, quote unquote, treat their friend if you are their friend. That is a problem. Your unwillingness to engage with how problematic it must be for a person to think Nigerians are scammers, therefore I didn't address you because I thought you were also a scammer, is a problem. And it highlights for me your willingness to, I would call this microaggression, but it's so overt that it's not even microaggression. This is a macroaggression. For you to accept this kind of racial aggression and completely ignore it and you do not engage with this, and then take it and internalize it and accept it as true without any pushback is absolutely insane. And it speaks to your character among white people when they engage in talking about Black people and Nigerians, the culture generally. It is insane to me that you don't understand how it's easy to see through you. Also, as a side note, nothing to do with this video, nothing to do with tokenism, to sit up there and call a woman a 1 out of 10, to call her a hooker, a street hooker, quote unquote, to do all of that highlights for everyone watching that you are not a feminist, one, and you didn't say you were, but more than that, you don't care nothing about women and victims. You don't care, you're not in solidarity with women, you don't care nothing about women generally. Because if you can be that disrespectful to another woman that you've never met, and you think the description of her makes her a hooker, quote unquote, you too are a problem. And when you're talking about women being with you, it's very hard for women to be with you while you're on the same note, disparage other women. You're disparaging other women that you do not know. You don't even know if that could be one more of his victims, but you just thought she was ugly and she was a hooker, and that was enough for you to disrespect her. What if she is a hooker? At least she's getting money from the man that's scamming you. Bloop. All right, back to the tokenism. The way Onyeka describes her ex, if you ever want to see someone who is obsessed with whiteness, go back to that video and think about the blue-eyed blonde, that the kind of excitement that comes from her thinking she, quote unquote, bagged blonde blue eyes, insane. That's insane to me. But again, tokenism in this way have you pedestalizing whiteness while deprioritizing Blackness. And I'm not saying you can't love an attractive person of any race. No, fully do it. It is the description of the features, the whiteness, the blue eyes, the blonde. It's very, very telling about Onyeka's pedestalization of whiteness. I am not, by the way, saying this can change. If Onyeka wanted to take accountability, not for anything that was done insofar as the money being stolen, which she should, because you brought the fox into the hen house, I think that's the phrase. But not just that. If you want to really reflect, you should probably do some deep work on what it means to have kind of radical self-acceptance and racial self-acceptance, right? What it means to like being Black and truly what that would look like for you. Instead of saying, I don't see color, recognize color and see it and understand it and be willing to engage it. This means you would have to completely disregard ideas around respectability and respectability politics. It means you would have to listen to some of the critique by your fellow Nigerians and Black women generally, and think more deeply about how you have internalized white supremacy and how that allowed you to be open to exploitation. Think about what it means to be a token, what the symbols mean that you put forward when you are in a group of all white women, which again, there's nothing wrong with having a bunch of white friends and posting those pictures and being proud, but think about what that means to you. Actually think, if it doesn't, then period, you done the work. But if it means something to portray yourself as among white women, think about what that says about you and who you want to be and who you are. While tokenism can be and is a structural issue, in this case, I believe it to also be a personal flaw. And not just a personal flaw, but a personal failure. Self deception in this way does not protect you, it does not save you. Self deception in this way leads you to more failure. Everyone you meet that is white is not automatically your friend. For all the best friends you had, the fact that no one tried to engage with you about what you're doing in a meaningful way is absolutely insane. Or they did, and you lied that they didn't talk to you. And if they did tell you that this man was trash and you did absolutely nothing about it, then this makes you more culpable than not. Healing requires you, for people who are perceived as token, healing is more difficult. For people who want to be token, it is clear that you understand who you are and where you want to be, but also who you want to be. This makes the work easier for you to do. Tough, painful, but easier once you can accept that you have internalized white supremacy and that you need to do some kind of work to change. I will give you some recommended readings. Uh, there's a book called Presumed Incompetent. I will post it somewhere here. Very good book. I read this a while ago and I completely forgot it until this very video. And by the way, this is the part of the video where I would read a comment from last week, but because I didn't make a video last week, I'm giving you recommended readings. There's a book called Sister Citizen, Shame and the Black Woman Experience in America. I think I'll post it here. Those are books that you should be reading. The first and the last one, 10 out of 10. The middle one I'm still reading, so I will get back to you on that. So I hope, Onyeka, you're watching this. I'm not giving you an assignment. All you need to do is go to your therapist and let them know that you have internalized racism and you need to work through it. Or internalized white supremacy, right? And we all struggle from what it means to be othered in a culture where the norm is whiteness. And so I can understand how you would be caught up in whiteness as a matter of fact. What I don't understand is your unwillingness to work through it and your willingness to lean so heavily into what I believe to be white aesthetic. Anyway, that is all I have for today. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys later. This was supposed to be in my live stream, but I realized that I was having too much fun watching the video and talking to Kilo and DJ, and so I just completely ignored my notes. So my notes are now a video. I hope you enjoy the video. Again, remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you later. Bye. I'm using a different camera and the lens or the lens way too wide. Way too wide. I'm gonna try to zoom and see what happens, but bye. All right, it's me. And before I go, I want to thank you all so much for watching. Period. How and ever. I will never be using this camera again. I have not slept. And when I say I have not slept, I literally mean my eyes have not closed from sitting up waiting for this to be uploaded to YouTube. It never got uploaded to YouTube. So I don't know how my workday is about to be. I don't know how that is about to be because I could have just streamed this last night if I knew it was going to take forever. But by the time I looked up, it was already 7 a.m. And so I don't know what to do. But I do have to go to work. That much I do know. So thank you all for watching. I'm going to upload this now and I'm going to attempt to remove the first part that was like buffering like crazy. Either it's an internet problem or my new camera problem, but the new camera is a DJI Cosmo Pocket or something like that. And I was trying to work it, but it's too big. The files are way too big. Anyway, I appreciate you all. Thank you so very much. Have a great day. Have a great day. Bye.